It's Thursday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope you guys are all having a tremendous day out there today and a very good show to bring you right now. Velle E. Neal III will join me here in a little bit for our Daily Delivery debate segment, talking about the Vikings, the Timberwolves, and the Wild. Plenty of things that are on our radar pretty consistently, of course, things we talk about a lot on this show. Get to some Viking stuff at the end of the show, too, in conjunction with those horrific fires in California, in the Los Angeles area, and how that could impact Monday's playoff game against the Rams. First, though, what I miss, I want to start with a few teams that maybe I don't talk about enough or quite as often as at least as the ones Velle and I will get into in a little bit. Gopher women's basketball, St. Thomas men's basketball, and the Minnesota Frost. All three teams won last night. And let's start with the Gopher women's basketball team because when Mara Braun went down with an injury again earlier this season, kind of wondered if they would be able to sustain the hot start they had, things like that. They've done more than that. They have exceeded their I think their early expectations. They are 16-1 now after easily defeating Rutgers last night, 76-50. Gophers missing, of course, still Mara Braun. Tori McKinney, who's been great for them, freshman who's been great for them. She sat out. She's in the concussion protocol. Rutgers didn't have their super freshman, Kiyomi McMiller. She's been embroiled in a little bit of controversy, it sounds like. She missed her second straight game. She was benched the previous game, still just watching this game, so we'll have to see what happens there. But the Gophers, obviously without two of their best players, still win this game by 26. Amaya Battle has a big game for the Gophers. She kind of stuffs the stat sheet, 7 of 15 shooting, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals. McKenna Johnson, another excellent freshman for the Gophers, 15 points. And the defense, which has really been what they have been preaching, what head coach Dawn Plitzawhite, when she knows she has a team that she likes, she knows she's getting that defensive effort consistently. She's been getting it from this team most of the time, and it shows up in the results. 16-1, 4-1 in the Big Ten. Their non-conference schedule was not great. Let's just be honest about that. But they won the games they needed to. They beat the teams they needed to. And right now, I think they're 28th in the net rankings right now in the NCAA. Great position to, continue on in the Big Ten, win some more games, get themselves in position to be a tournament team this season. And again, we'll see what injuries kind of slow them down or what they're able to play through, whether Mara Braun, who I believe Kent Youngblood wrote the other day, is out of her walking boot, has been cleared to be out of her walking boot with that foot injury, but we'll see if she's able to play still this season or if that needs more time. But it seems like it's a much deeper team than they were last year, and I think they talked about that at the start of the season, that was one thing they were looking forward to. They had a couple injuries last season. All of a sudden, their depth was perilously thin. They fell apart down the stretch, couldn't win in the Big Ten. Got some good wins in the postseason, not in the NCAA tournament, but a secondary tournament. That kind of sparked them towards this year. But good work in recruiting, good work in the portal has given them a lot more depth this year and the ability to withstand more of those injuries. So 16-1, nothing wrong with that right now for the Gophers women's basketball team. St. Thomas men's basketball team is 3-0 in the Summit League right now for the first time. I believe I think it's the first time they've been in the Summit League, 3-0 to start the season. Great win last night at home against South Dakota State, 73-72. That follows earlier wins in league play against North Dakota State and North Dakota. All those games have been close. All of them, single-digit wins. The first two against North Dakota and North Dakota State were on the road. They're 99th in the net ratings. That's not like, this isn't a juggernaut we're talking about. I think they're 13-5 overall, 3-0 in conference play. But standing in stark contrast, I guess I would say, to the other Division I team in town right now, the Gophers men's basketball team, who are down in the 150s right now. We talked about them plenty on Wednesday's show with Marcus Fuller. they're struggling. They're winless in league play. St. Thomas undefeated in league play. And obviously, a little bit of apples to oranges comparison here still between these two programs. The quality of the conference is not the same, but St. Thomas is playing good teams. The Summit League is a good conference. These are good teams they're playing. They played good teams in the non-conference schedule. They played Oklahoma State, lost. They played Arizona State, which I believe is in the top 50 or 60 in the net ratings right now. Lost that game, but still, they're playing better competition and, at least being able to compete in those games. They don't have a lot of really bad losses on their schedule, except maybe the one against Wofford. That was not a good one to Wofford. I believe that was probably a holiday tournament over Thanksgiving. But overall, 13-5, 3-0 in the conference, winning games with, I think last night's game they were out-rebounded quite considerably, but still they do a good job of taking care of the ball. I think they only had 4 turnovers in last night's game. Might have to get over and check out one of those games because it sounds like it's a lot of fun. The other Division I team in town, basketball, men's basketball, they got Division I across the board, women's basketball, all the other sports. But I think this is a team maybe that's worth watching, especially if you are a little bit skeptical or bored of what's going on with the men's basketball program at the University of Minnesota right now. This could be a team for you to latch onto and go check out. I think I might have to do that myself sometime before the year is over. Same goes for the Minnesota Frost. They won 2-1 in a shootout in overtime last night against Boston. In good shape right now. They're second in the league. Taylor Heise with the overtime winner for the Frost last night. They, of course, are coming off of their championship a year ago. That strange season where they were, red hot at the start of the year, lost 5 straight games at the end of the regular season, barely got into the playoffs after having a lot of chances to clinch, kind of needed some help towards the end. Lost their first 2 playoff games last year, then went on that playoff run, and then not long after that, fired their general manager, Natalie Darwitz. It was a very strange and weird run for that team, but here they are now. Good start to this season, second in the league in points, getting a lot of contributions up and down the lineups. Looks like Maddie Rooney, their excellent goaltender, had a very good game last night, made a bunch of saves, 26 in that game, and like I said, Taylor Heise had the game winner in overtime. Had a lot of fun with a lot of those players, by the way, out at the State Fair earlier this year. That's one of the highlights of the fair, was talking to all those Frost players and getting their perspectives on winning the championship. They were parading around with the Walter Cup and having tons of fun with that. So just a good group, a fun group, a lot of talent, obviously, again, still on that team, making Minnesota proud in the state of hockey again. Not just the Wild in this state right now with the pro teams doing well. It is the Frost as well. So another team to pay attention to, another team for me to keep on my radar. I get locked in a little bit on Wolves, Twins, Wild, Gophers, Timberwolves, Vikings, all those teams. I might have said Wolves twice. I don't know if I did or not. That's a slip. We'll call them Wolves and Timberwolves, 2 different teams. They do seem like 2 different teams at certain points this season. One sometimes that can win, one sometimes that cannot. They play tonight against Orlando. Wild back in action as well. Lots to get to with them on Friday's show, as I'm sure I will. But for right now, like I said, focusing on some of those other teams who all won on Wednesday night. Happy to be joined right now by Velle E. Neal III from the Star Tribune. Velle, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy Hump Day.
Happy Hump Day to those who celebrate, although today is Thursday now. But when we're recording, it is Hump Day. It is Wednesday. We are in the studio at the Star Tribune. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. A lot to talk about on this daily delivery debate segment. First up, Velle, you wrote about Vikings fans this week. I wrote about Vikings fans a little bit this week as well. Where should the headspace be right now for the Vikings and their fans?
Well, you just can't automatically expect doom and gloom because of one bad loss in Detroit. Yeah, it was a 22-point loss. Yes, the Lions look unstoppable, especially at home. But in this season, anything is possible. And they're going to play a Rams team that's definitely beatable, and they get another chance. They have another chance to face the Lions. You know what you did wrong. You know Donald didn't play well. You know you got to handle the pass rush better. Maybe there's something called a screen pass that you may want to think about running more of Vikings KOC. But there's no reason to go into Monday's game. By the way, I hate Monday playoff games because if you win, now you're on a short week, and that should not happen in the postseason.
I don't like night games in the playoffs. Just period. I don't like when the Vikings play at night. Period. Yeah. But anyway.
So so you don't go into Monday's game fatalistic, thinking that this is the same old Vikings. We're going to lose spectacularly, and this season means nothing. No, this season's meant a lot. You've overcome expectations. 6.5 wins were the prediction at the beginning of the year. Darnold was a has-been or never was, and he's turned his career around regardless of what happened against the Lions. The defense still has the same bite. A lot of good things have happened to this team this year. And you should be fired up about this. The fact that they are in the playoffs, because a lot of people doubted that possibility at the beginning of the year. And now you head into a matchup you can win. And it makes for a better story if you get the matchup against the hated rivals, and that is what possibly is awaiting them if or when they beat the Rams on Monday.
Yeah, that's true. I know. I think people are having a hard time because of the history of this franchise, right? Like there's so much negative history, and then it was like a greatest hits against the Lions, right? Like the kicker missed a kick, he botched a kickoff, and then it's like, oh, great, here we go again with the kicker problems. And then Darnold was errant. You're like, oh, man, if you've been waiting for him and the other shoe to drop, there it was. And like, the defense played pretty well, but they couldn't hold them down. Like they were crumbling when it matters the most. But it's like, I get it. I get the tendency. But I also do think this year's team is different than the previous iterations. I don't feel the same about this team. That doesn't mean they're going to win automatically Monday, but I do feel like in general, like that was the first real like awful performance they put up this season.
Maybe since Jacksonville.
Since Jacksonville, they won that game because Jacksonville's terrible. But like they don't have a lot of clunkers. They have earned, I think, the benefit of the doubt this season.
And plus, our favorite NFL Network host Jamie Erdahl will be in attendance Monday night because they filmed that show in L.A.
There you go.
And she confirmed yesterday to me that she will be at the game. Maybe there'll be a miniature version of the Gallahorn that she can blow just to give it the feel that they're in U.S. Bank Stadium. But the good luck charm is going to be in the house. So you got to get like your chances, Vikings fans.
Right, because they were undefeated.
They went 9 straight after she blew the horn.
Right. So there you go. I do think there's concerns about what happened in the Lions game. I think if the Rams copy, the zero blitz concept, they're going to have better answers than they had against the Lions.
I'm curious to see that because I went and looked up because I know they got Jared Verse, and a lot of people here thought that the Vikings should have drafted him.
Right. Instead of Dallas Turner.
Exactly. And there was other good. They have another rookie, I believe, on the defensive line is pretty good. So I went and looked at the numbers. They're like in the bottom third in sacks as a team. So that surprised me a little bit. So I don't know how often they're going to dial up zero blitzes or if they're comfortable doing that, leaving their guys on the island against Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and T.J. Hawkinson. I'm not sure how comfortable they will be doing that. That's going to be one of the interesting things in this game. And the other thing is we got to adjust quicker. When they started blitzing against the Lions, I don't think the adjustments came fast enough, and that's on KOC and the staff. So hopefully everybody's better off for it. Hopefully Sam's better off for going through what I thought was probably the biggest game in his career last Sunday.
Oh yeah, he hasn't played a playoff game before. Like this is all new to him, right?
So maybe he had to suffer a little bit before he can step up here because the lights are brighter now in the postseason. And like I said, make quicker adjustments to handle this blitz man because there were points out there, there were yards out there that were not taken advantage of, and they have a chance to right those wrongs on Monday against the Rams.
I agree. I wonder where their heads are. I wonder where fans' heads truly will be when you get to Monday. Like you can say everything leading up to it. If your last game was 31-9, you need good things to happen probably early in that game. Road game maybe helps them a little bit. Like there's this tension that happens when they're at US Bank Stadium, when there's this expectation. I felt it when I went to that playoff game a couple of years ago after that 13-4 season. Like one little thing goes wrong, everybody gets kind of fatalistic. That won't happen as much on the road, although they will probably travel reasonably well to that stadium.
And the other thing too is that when you're in the red zone, you gotta score 7, especially on the road.
Gosh, yeah.
I think there was something. I hate using the word fatalistic, but you don't like it when the Vikings are kicking field goals in the first half.
Oh no.
In a game in which you know you have to outscore the other team's offense a little bit.
100%.
So if they get in those situations on Monday, they've got to get in the end zone.
I agree, 100%. Let's move on to the next thing, Lavelle. Topic number 2. 2 wins in a row for the Timberwolves since they changed their starting lineup. Are they fixed now that Chris Finch has listened to us all?
Absolutely not. I don't think they're fixed at all. They still got some issues defensively. I was watching some of the game yesterday. Julius Randle, man, his mobility on defense, it's hard to watch him play.
Finchie praised him, though. He said he did the best job against Zion. He had a pretty good game.
Yeah, maybe it was a better matchup for him then. But I like the flexibility that Finch is now showing. I've been arguing about this since the beginning of the year. He has the hammer, which is called the bench, that he needs to use more of. But DiVincenzo in the starting lineup instead of Conley gives him a different look. Allows for more things to happen. DiVincenzo's found his stroke a little bit from the perimeter, which has helped. And when they made that trade for Randle and DiVincenzo, I thought they were adding two dogs, which is not a bad thing to have on your roster. And maybe that type of mentality, is something they need to show earlier in games with him, part of that starting unit to help them get off on the fast. Although I think they fell behind by 18, didn't they?
The first game they did, and then the other day against New Orleans, they had a better start. They were up big early. They were up like 16-4, but then New Orleans got back into it. Then it was the bad start to the third quarter. But after that, Edwards seems like he's having a little bit more fun now. There's a little bit more space for him. There's one more, active guy running around taking shots in DiVincenzo. It's like Conley was miscast kind of in the role they were trying to put him in early on, and now he's in a better spot.
I remember one of our previous debates we talked about who's to blame for this, and I think you wanted to blame Edwards. I think you wanted to blame Finch a little bit, and the more I've thought about that, the more I kind of come over to your side on the Finch thing, because I thought these adjustments would come quicker, and they haven't. Putting Randall with Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid on the second unit, starting DiVincenzo, trying to find these little wrinkles. We got to figure out how to get some offense, some consistent offense out of Jaden McDaniels. That would definitely help as well. Or use the bench and keep him off the floor, even at the expense of defense. He's got to find the right rotations, he's got to find the right combinations, and I just think it's been a little slow for that to materialize in recent weeks.
Yeah, and then Edwards, ever since I talked about that and wrote about that, has been lighting it up from 3. I've been getting jumped online, getting jumped in the YouTube comments about that. Like, how can you write that? He had 53 against Detroit. He had this and that and the other thing. It's like, that's of course what happens, right? Hey, you write about someone going bad, and then of course they turn it around. Right?
Did they win that game when he scored 53?
No, they did not. Not even close.
That reminded me of being a young Bulls fan in Chicago. The team was called Michael and the Jordanaires, because Jordan would score 45 or 50, and they would still lose because only Charles Oakley would reach double digits, and it was a disaster. So no, don't celebrate the fact that Ant had scored 53 points in a loss. He's not fixed.
No, he's not fixed right now. He's been better lately.
Yes.
He's been scoring a lot. He's been distributing. Like, the point I made with that was, like, he just his attitude needed to get better, and he needs, of course, to be their best player. And on a lot of nights he is that, but he's still not at the level where I think people want him to be at, especially after the Towns trade. So I think there's still work to be done. I think they're inching towards better solutions, inching towards the idea of more flexibility. He's not just the starting lineup, but the closing lineup can change from night to night, which is nice to see. Like the other night, Randall was on the bench because Naz Reid was playing better. They've had Gobert on the bench sometimes. Against the Pelicans, it was kind of the original starting 5 that was closing it out and did a decent job of that. So whoever the hot hand is, it seems like a no-brainer, right? Like, you should be playing the guys that are playing the best, but that's not always how it's been with Finch.
I just want to see some more flow on offense. Guys continue to move the ball movement, and sometimes when Anthony Edwards is hunting for baskets, he will get the ball and then he will set the hook. He would cast the rod and the hook into the water, wait for the fish to bite, and then yank it. And by that time, everybody has stopped moving because they're watching Ant kind of set up his next move. I want to see a little more quicker, more decisiveness from him, perhaps, in terms of how he's attacking the basket, looking for driving lanes, and not being afraid to kick the ball out if there's nothing there, not force things. So,
well, they've got kind of an opportunity here, right? Like, it's a bunch of toss-up games in a row. They're at Orlando, home against the Grizzlies, at the Wizards, home against the Warriors, and then Friday the 17th at the Knicks, the rematch of that. Then they're home against the Cavaliers. Like, those are going to be tough. That's a back-to-back with the Knicks and Cavs. But the next 4 are winnable but not pushover games because there's a couple of road games in there, a couple tougher opponents mixed in with that. Like, this will be a pretty good test. Like, if they're who they want to be, they should go 3-1 in this stretch. If they're not, then we're just going to have to accept the reality that they're probably a 43 or 44 win team and not a serious team.
And that's a really disappointing admission if you get to that point with this group, because you were thinking they're going to take another step forward, and it's just going to lead to more clamoring about how the trade should not have been made.
Right.
For the way it's affected chemistry on and off the court. I was reading something about one of Cat's endearing qualities is that when things were bad, he would say something either funny or something that didn't make sense that just made everybody laugh because it didn't make any sense, but it would help them move on after tough moments. And no one is there to fill that role right now. And maybe that's something they've had to deal with as well.
Final thing, who has been, Lavelle, the most impressive wild player in the absence of Kirill Kaprizov? They have resumed winning even without their best player right now.
At the beginning of the year when I was looking at the Wild, I talked to Bill Guerin, and Guerin's like, we need more from Johansson, we need more from Hartman, we need more from Zucker. And I was like, I agree with that, but I think for this team to be the best version of itself, it's going to be the rise of the younger core. Faber continuing to be the guy.
He got hurt the other night.
Boldy stacking and building another great season on what he did last year. But, my guy has been Marco Rossi. Looking at him, he made a significant jump last year, earned more playing time. In 82 games last year, he scored 47. No, he didn't. 47. He scored 40 points. We just hit the halfway point of this season. He's at 37. He's almost scored as many points this year as he had all of last year. He's playing better. He's earned more ice time. His face-off percentage is up. There was rumors about maybe the Wild would trade him because they got guys coming through the pipeline here, and they may want to move him to get him out of the way. I'm like, no. For years, we have worried about the Wild having quality center play. And now you have a guy and in Rossi who continues to get better. He's making jumps here. And now he's got an outside chance for 30 goals, which I don't think a lot of people saw coming in the end. And he's a fascinating player because he's not big. He's not a big part. He's 5'9", maybe weighs 190 pounds. I'm not sure if he weighs that much. And so he's kind of a little guy, but he's always in the tight spots. He's always in the mixer trying to score goals. So that's a great quality for him to have. But he's being productive. I credit Marco Rossi for helping the Wild sustain success in the absence of Kirill Kaprizov.
I think it's a good one. I think that's a good kind of name to put into that mix. I would include, obviously, Boldy has been pretty good in a lot of these spots. I mean, but he's more of a known commodity at this point. I think we've seen for sure the importance of Eriksson Ek because they kind of like crossed paths a little bit, ships in the night. It wasn't quite the same exact moment that Kaprizov went out. I think that Eriksson Ek came back, but he's been impressive. He's on a 4-game point streak right now since he returned from his injury. 4 straight wins with him in the lineup. I think Gustafsson up until Tuesday night had been awfully good too.
I agree.
He got pulled in that game. Fleury comes in, gets the job done. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a easy answer to kind of spread the wealth. I'm generally agreeing with your Rossi take just because he's had the ability to take over games at certain points. But it really has been a group effort. Like I thought when Kaprizov went out, that they were going to be in a bad way, and they just haven't been. It's 6 out of the last 7.
Plus, I saw last night after Merrill scored. I'm sorry, Tuesday night after Merrill scored.
Yeah.
The Wild are in the top 5 in points from defensemen in the league.
Yeah, I believe it.
And then Jake Middleton scored after that.
Middleton scored.
I think the first 3 goals were by defensemen.
Yeah, they get a bunch of contributions. And
so I still think if you look at the overall picture for the entire season, the rise of Gustafsson has been the biggest development,
100%.
I think. As much as I like Rossi right now in the absence of Kaprizov, the Gus Bus, returning to Gus Bus form, has been the reason why the Wild are the Wild this year.
Well, I mean, my whole thing off this offseason was they got too many goalies, right? Like you wanted to see what Wallstedt could do. You still had Fleury under contract for a year, and you had Gustafsson, who was coming off a subpar year last year, at least based on his standards from 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And instead, they stood pat. They didn't do anything. Bill Guerin said, you know what, we're just going to kind of play this out, ride it out. Good thing they did, because Gustafsson's been their most valuable player all year.
Absolutely. He's helped, and he's got good defense in front of him, and the D in front of him knows that they're backed up by Gus Bus too. It's just all working right now. So, yeah, and that was evident from the beginning of the season that Gus was a different guy. So he took what happened to him last year to heart and has made the necessary adjustments to kind of regain the trust of his coaching staff. And credit to him for making that change.
Absolutely. Lavelle, great stuff as always. What else you got coming up this week?
I'm writing more Vikings. You can't write enough Vikings right now, so I'll have something in Sunday's paper previewing the big game against the Rams. So, like I said, you don't know how long these runs are going to last, so you got to take advantage. So, plus, I want to cover a road game, so I'm trying to get in line here.
There you go.
If we have to go to Philly, I have no fear of going into Lincoln Financial Stadium.
There you go. All right, Lavelle, appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Good stuff from Lavelle, as always, on the point of the Vikings and their fans and kind of where the headspace is at going into the playoff game. I get it, why, you got those emotional scars. You've got 60-plus years of history, losing big games. It's been almost 50 years since they've even been in the Super Bowl, let alone those 4 Super Bowl losses before that. There's a lot to unpack there. 2 things, though, I would say about that. 1, I think this year's team feels different. That's not to say the outcome will be different. That's not to say you won't go into this game with an emotional investment and have the potential for a letdown. That's obviously always possible when 2 teams go in. One of them's going to lose. Someone's going to be disappointed, things like that. But this team does feel different. They're not buying into that kind of like self-pity mode, things like that. So this team does feel different. I do feel like they have a certain resilience that will help them kind of wash away whatever happened against the Lions and put on a good performance against the Rams. Number 2, I think that the collective fan psyche does play into how the Vikings perform sometimes, particularly at home. So I don't always think it's bad for them to be on the road in these key games, especially a playoff game. Obviously, that hasn't worked out for them in Philadelphia, places like that 7 years ago. But in general, being in somebody else's space, being at a place where when one bad thing happens, your fans aren't suddenly getting quiet, getting all tense, things like that, might not be the worst thing in the world. Because I do think there's this thing where a big game, Vikings fans start to fear the worst. There's this tension that builds. You can feel it. I'm not saying that's why Vikings teams in the past have lost or not performed well in these big moments, but I do think there is something to this collective psyche. So going on the road in this game, the Vikings will probably travel well. More on that in a moment. Fans will probably travel well, but I do think it's not necessarily a bad thing for them to be on the road in terms of the pressure or this kind of feeling you get in these big moments. So we'll see what all unfolds in that game. We'll see how this all shakes out, but I do give them a pretty good chance to win against the Rams. Now, speaking of this game, let's talk about the cooler. The NFL has come out and said if the wildfires in Los Angeles dictate that this game cannot be played at SoFi Stadium on Monday, the game will be moved to Arizona. That would be pretty wild to see a playoff game move to a different location. Obviously, the impact of what's happening in Los Angeles, evacuations, just the terribleness of all this. This dwarfs any impact on the NFL, any impact on sports, but they've already had to postpone some games, some other events there right now. This game on Monday, we'll see, hopefully, for so many reasons, while they can get this under control, get this, get the air quality better, get people back, get people back into their spaces, things like that. But if this game has to be moved to Arizona, that would be an interesting twist to this season and the NFL playoffs. So monitoring that, especially as we get closer, Friday, Saturday, if they have to make a decision at some point, we will see where that all leads them. That will do it for me today. Ben Gessling on tomorrow's show to talk more Vikings, setting you up for the big game. Obviously, no shows over the weekend because there won't be a Vikings game on Sunday. Looking at doing some special stuff Monday, though, as we get ready for the game, and then maybe a post-game show Monday off of that game, even though it'll be late. So some special content coming up, some more Access Viking stuff coming up as well, so listen for that. Until then, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Back at it again tomorrow.